The blood moon hung heavy in the sky like a crimson omen, casting eerie shadows across the Silverpaw Pack's ceremonial grounds where my sister's wedding was about to begin. I stood at the very back of the gathering, pressed against the ancient oak trees that bordered the sacred circle, trying to make myself as invisible as possible while my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Elena, my younger sister by barely 2 years, looked radiant in her ceremonial white gown as she prepared to mate with Alpha Damien Blackwood, the most powerful and sought-after leader in our region. Her golden hair cascaded down her back like spun sunshine, and her blue eyes sparkled with the joy of a woman about to claim everything she had ever wanted. I should have been happy for her. Sisters were supposed to celebrate each other's triumphs, support each other through life's greatest moments. But all I could feel was the crushing weight of my own inadequacy, the bitter taste of rejection that had defined my existence for as long as I could remember. My name is Arya Moonwhisper, and I am the unwanted daughter of the Silverpaw Pack, not literally unwanted, perhaps, but close enough to make no difference in practical terms. At 23, I was already considered past my prime for mating, a spinster whose lack of a chosen partner reflected poorly on my family's standing within the pack hierarchy. The problem wasn't my appearance, though I had never possessed Elena's ethereal beauty. My dark hair and green eyes were pleasant enough, and my figure was proportional, if unremarkable. The problem was something far more fundamental. I was weak. Not just physically, though I had never excelled in combat training or supernatural abilities. I was weak in all the ways that mattered to a pack that valued strength above all else. My wolf form was smaller than average. My healing abilities were mediocre at best, and I possessed none of the commanding presence that marked natural leaders. In a society where worth was measured by power, I was essentially worthless. Look at her, standing there like she belongs, whispered someone from the crowd, though they made no effort to lower their voice enough to spare my feelings, as if anyone would want to claim the pack's leftover. I heard Alpha Damien specifically requested that she not be part of the wedding party, added another voice, this one carrying the cruel satisfaction of someone who enjoyed spreading painful gossip. Said having her visible during the ceremony would be an insult to his bride. The words hit me like physical blows, each one driving home the reality that everyone present saw me as exactly what those whispers suggested, the leftover, the unwanted sister, the disappointment that everyone tolerated but no one valued. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to hold together what remained of my dignity as the ceremony began. The pack's elder, an ancient wolf named Cornelius Stormheart, stepped forward to perform the mating ritual that would bind Elena and Alpha Damien for life. We gather under the blood moon to witness the joining of two souls, Cornelius intoned, his voice carrying across the assembled pack with the authority of centuries. Alpha Damien Blackwood of the Shadowcrest Pack and Elena Moonwhisper of the Silverpaw Pack, step forward to claim your destiny. The words that followed were beautiful, speaking of eternal bonds and shared strength, of two becoming one under the goddess's blessing. But all I could focus on was the growing whispers around me, the cruel commentary that seemed to grow bolder as the ceremony progressed. Can you imagine if Arya had been chosen instead? Someone said with barely suppressed laughter. The poor Alpha would have gotten the defective sister by mistake. At least Eleanor has something to offer, replied another voice. Arya would just drag down any mate foolish enough to claim her. She'll probably end up as a pack servant, suggested a third speaker. It's really the only role suited to someone with her limitations. Each word was like acid poured into an open wound, but I forced myself to remain silent and still. Drawing attention to myself would only make things worse, would only confirm their beliefs about my unsuitability for anything beyond the margins of pack society. The ceremony reached its crescendo as Alpha Damien and Elena exchanged the ritual, bites that would mark them as mated for life. The crowd erupted in cheers and howls of approval. celebrating the union that would strengthen both packs through alliance and shared bloodlines. But as the celebration began in earnest, the whispers about me grew more pointed and vicious. "She's 23 and still unmated," observed Beta Marcus Ironwood from the Shadowcrest pack, his voice carrying clearly through the night air. "In my pack, we'd have found her a role as a servant years ago, rather than letting her embarrass her family like this." "Maybe that's what she needs," agreed Gamma Robert Steelfang. "Someone to put her in her place, make her useful for something other than taking up space and resources." "The problem is finding someone desperate enough," laughed another wolf. "Even Omegas have standards, and she doesn't meet them." The cruelty of their words was breathtaking, but what hurt most was the way other pack members nodded along, as if my unworthiness was simply an accepted fact that everyone acknowledged. No one spoke in my defense. No one suggested that their assessment might be too harsh. I truly was alone in a crowd of people who had known me my entire life. I was preparing to slip away into the forest, to disappear before the humiliation could get any worse. When a voice cut through the cruel laughter like a blade through silk. "That's enough," the words were spoken quietly. But they carried an authority that made every conversation in the immediate area stop dead. I turned toward the source of the interruption and felt my breath catch in my throat. Liam Stormclaw, Beta of the Shadowcrest pack and Alpha Damien's second-in-command, stood just a few feet away from me. At 28, he was in his prime, with the kind of commanding presence that made other wolves instinctively defer to his judgment. His dark hair was touched with silver at the temples, marking him as someone who had seen battle and emerged victorious. His grey eyes held intelligence and strength in equal measure. More importantly, he was looking directly at me, with an expression I couldn't quite identify. "Beta Liam," Marcus Ironwood said with the nervous laughter of someone caught behaving badly by a superior. "We were just making conversation. You were just demonstrating why the Shadowcrest pack values honor over cruelty," Liam replied, his voice carrying disapproval that made several wolves step back instinctively. "Continue with your celebration. I need to speak with Miss Moonwhisper." The dismissal was clear and absolute, sending the gossips scurrying away to find easier targets for their venom. But I barely noticed their departure, too focused on the impossible reality that Liam Stormclaw, one of the most respected wolves in either pack, wanted to speak with me, Miss Moonwhisper, he said formally, though his voice carried warmth that surprised me. "Would you do me the honor of walking with me? I believe we have much to discuss." I nodded mutely, not trusting my voice to remain steady, and fell into step beside him as we moved away from the celebration, toward the quieter paths that wound through the pack's territory. "I apologize for the behavior you witnessed tonight," he said once we were out of earshot of the other guests. "There's no excuse for such cruelty, especially during what should be a joyous occasion. You don't need to apologize for them," I managed to say, though my voice sounded small and uncertain, even to my own ears. They were just speaking the truth. "I am unworthy, at least by the standards that matter to our kind." Liam stopped walking and turned to face me, his grey eyes studying my face with intensity that made me want to look away. "And what standards are those?" he asked gently. "Strength, power, the ability to contribute something meaningful to pack society," I replied, listing the failures that had defined my existence. "I'm weak in every way that matters. Everyone knows it. Everyone is wrong," Liam said with such conviction that I felt something shift inside my chest. "But that's a conversation for another time. Right now, I need to ask you something important." He stepped closer, and I caught his scent, something that spoke of pine forests and thunderstorms and strength that went deeper than mere physical power. "Aria Moonwhisper, would you accept me as your mate?" The question hit me like lightning, so unexpected and impossible that I was certain I had misheard. "What? I'm asking you to mate with me," he repeated, his voice steady and sure. "I'm asking you to let me claim you before this entire gathering, to show everyone present that you are not unwanted or unworthy, but chosen by someone who sees your true value. Tears began streaming down my cheeks as I struggled to process what he was offering. But why? You could have anyone. You're powerful, respected, everything a mate should be. Why would you choose someone like me? Liam smiled, and the expression transformed his stern features into something almost beautiful. Because I've been watching you for longer than you know, and I've seen qualities in you that everyone else has overlooked. Kindness, resilience, the strength to endure cruelty without becoming cruel yourself. Those are rarer gifts than physical power, Arya. They're the qualities that make someone truly worthy. He extended his hand toward me, palm up in the traditional gesture of invitation. So I ask again, will you accept me as your mate and allow me the honor of claiming you before all these witnesses? Looking into his eyes, seeing sincerity and something that might have been genuine affection, I felt the first spark of hope I had experienced in years. Maybe I wasn't unwanted after all. Maybe someone could see value in me that I had never recognized in myself. Yes, I whispered, placing my hand in his. Yes, I accept. The smile that spread across Liam's face was brilliant enough to rival the blood moon overhead. And as he led me back toward the celebration, I felt my life transforming in ways I had never dared to imagine possible. The walk back to the celebration felt like stepping into a dream, or perhaps a nightmare from which I couldn't wake. Liam's hand was warm and strong around mine, anchoring me to a reality that seemed too incredible to be true. Every step brought us closer to a confrontation that would either elevate me beyond my wildest hopes or destroy what little standing I had left in packed society. The music and laughter grew louder as we approached the ceremonial grounds, where Elena and Alpha Damien were receiving congratulations from the assembled guests. Torches blazed around the sacred circle, casting dancing shadows that seemed to pulse in rhythm with my racing heartbeat. Are you certain about this? I asked quietly, giving Liam one final chance to reconsider what he was about to do. Once you claim me publicly, there's no taking it back. Your reputation will be tied to mine, and everyone knows what they think of me. Let me worry about my reputation, Liam replied, with quiet confidence that both reassured and terrified me. The only opinion that matters to me is my own, and I know exactly what I'm doing. We had almost reached the edge of the crowd when someone noticed our approach. The whispered comments that followed our progress were like ripples spreading across still water, growing stronger and more incredulous with each passing moment. Is that Beta Liam with Arya Moonwhisper? Why would he be holding her hand? Something's happening. Look at the way he's walking. By the time we reached the center of the ceremonial circle, every conversation had stopped. Hundreds of eyes focused on us, with expressions ranging from confusion to disbelief to barely concealed hostility. Even Elena and Alpha Damien had turned to see what was causing such a stir. Elder Cornelius stepped forward with the careful movements of someone navigating unfamiliar territory. Beta Liam, is there something you wish to announce? Yes, Liam replied, his voice carrying clearly across the suddenly silent gathering. I wish to formally claim Arya Moonwhisper as my chosen mate, under the blood moon and before all witnesses. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. Then the crowd erupted into chaos. He can't be serious. Has he lost his mind? She's nothing. A nobody! This has to be some kind of joke. Alpha Damien raised his hand for silence, his expression unreadable as he studied both Liam and me with calculating eyes. When the crowd finally quieted, he spoke with the authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected entire communities. Beta Liam, you are my most trusted advisor and closest friend, he said carefully. Are you certain this is what you want? There are many unmated females here tonight who would be honored by your attention. I'm certain, Liam replied without hesitation. I choose Arya Moonwhisper, and I ask for your blessing on our union. Elena stepped forward, her wedding gown rustling with each movement. Her face showed a mixture of shock and something that might have been betrayal. Arya, what is the meaning of this? How did you manipulate Beta Liam into this ridiculous declaration? The accusation hit me like a slap, but before I could defend myself, Liam's voice cut through the air with deadly quiet. "Miss Elena, I suggest you choose your next words very carefully. You're speaking about my chosen mate, and I don't tolerate insults directed at those under my protection." The threat was subtle, but unmistakable, and Elena stepped back as if she had been physically pushed. The crowd murmured with renewed shock at seeing the powerful Beta defend someone they had all dismissed as worthless. Marcus Ironwood, emboldened by liquid courage from the celebration, pushed through the crowd with belligerent determination. "This is absurd. Beta Liam, you're clearly not thinking straight. The girl is weak, useless, a burden to any pack. You could have your choice of strong, beautiful mates. Why throw your life away on damaged goods?" The insult was so blatant, so deliberately cruel, that several gasps echoed through the crowd. But Liam's response was swift and devastating. "Marcus Ironwood," he said in a voice that could have frozen fire, "you will apologize to my mate immediately, or you will face the consequences of insulting a member of the Shadowcrest Pack's leadership." Leadership? Marcus laughed, though the sound carried nervous edges. "She's not leadership. She's nobody, a failed wolf who couldn't find a mate among her own kind. She's my mate," Liam corrected with deadly calm, "which makes her my equal in rank and authority. Insult her again, and you'll answer to me personally." The threat silenced Marcus immediately, but the damage had been done. Every wolf present now understood that this wasn't just a personal declaration, but a political statement that would reshape the power dynamics between the packs. Elder Cornelius cleared his throat, drawing attention back to the formal proceedings. If Beta Liam wishes to claim Miss Moonwhisper as his mate, the ancient laws require that she accept the bond willingly and that any challenges to the union be addressed before the claiming can be completed. "I accept willingly," I said, my voice stronger than I had expected. "I choose Liam Stormclaw as my mate and protector." "Then let any who would challenge this union speak now," Cornelius declared, "or forever hold their peace." Gamma Robert Steelfang stepped forward with the swagger of someone who had been drinking too heavily. "I challenge this mating on the grounds that the female is unworthy of such an elevated position. She brings no strength, no connections, no benefit to the Shadowcrest Pack. This union will weaken them." A murmur of agreement rippled through portions of the crowd, particularly among the Shadowcrest wolves, who seemed to view my elevation as a personal insult to their pack standards. "Challenges must be answered," Elder Cornelius said reluctantly. "Beta Liam, do you accept Gamma Robert's challenge?" "I do," Liam replied with grim satisfaction, as if he had been hoping someone would be foolish enough to make such a challenge. "Trial by combat, winner takes all." "No!" I exclaimed, grabbing Liam's arm in desperation. "You don't have to fight for me. I'm not worth risking your life over." Liam turned to me, with eyes that blazed with fierce protectiveness. "You are worth everything to me," he said quietly, but his words carried to every person present. "And I will fight anyone who suggests otherwise." The combat circle was cleared within minutes, torches repositioned to provide optimal lighting for the confrontation that would determine my fate. Robert Steelfang stripped to his waist, revealing a heavily muscled frame marked with the scars of previous battles. He was younger than Liam by several years, and had a reputation for vicious fighting that showed no mercy to opponents. "Last chance to withdraw your ridiculous claim," Robert called out as they circled each other within the sacred boundaries. "Choose a worthy mate and I'll pretend this never happened." "The only thing I'll withdraw," Liam replied with deadly calm, "is your ability to insult my mate ever again." The fight that followed was brutal and swift. Robert attacked with the confidence of someone who had never lost a challenge, his claws and fangs seeking to end the confrontation quickly through overwhelming aggression. But Liam fought with something more dangerous than mere skill. He fought with the fury of a mate protecting what was his. Every blow Robert landed was answered with two in return. Every attempt to gain advantage was countered with tactical brilliance that spoke of years of combat experience. Within minutes, it became clear that Robert had badly underestimated his opponent. The end came suddenly. Robert overextended himself in a desperate attempt to land a decisive blow, and Liam seized the opening with ruthless efficiency. His counterattack sent Robert crashing to the ground with force that left him gasping and broken. "Yield," Liam commanded, standing over his defeated opponent with authority that no one present could question. "I yield," Robert gasped, his voice barely audible through pain and humiliation. A cheer rose from the crowd, though it was mixed with stunned silence from those who had expected a different outcome. Liam turned toward me with a smile that made my heart race, victory blazing in his grey eyes. "Any other challenges?" Elder Cornelius asked, though his tone suggested he hoped there would be none. The silence that followed was answer enough. Then by the ancient laws, and under the blessing of the blood moon, I pronounce Liam Stormclaw and Arya Moonwhisper mated for life, Cornelius declared. "Let all present witness their bond and honor their union." As Liam pulled me into his arms for the ritual kiss that would seal our bond, I felt tears streaming down my cheeks. But for the first time in my life, they were tears of joy rather than pain. The unwanted sister had found someone who saw her worth. The failed wolf had been claimed by one of the most powerful betas in the region, and the woman everyone called Unworthy had discovered that sometimes the right person could see value that others had missed entirely. Don't miss the incredible conclusion to this amazing transformation story. Subscribe to our channel to see how Arya's new life unfolds and what challenges await the newly mated pair. Will their bond survive the jealousy and political intrigue that threatens to tear them apart? Hit that subscribe button and notification bell for the epic finale that will leave you breathless. 6 months had passed since that transformative blood moon wedding, and the supernatural world had learned to speak my name with respect rather than dismissal. The cottage that Liam and I shared on the borders between pack territories had become an unlikely center of diplomatic activity, where disputes were resolved and alliances forged through wisdom rather than warfare. But it was the changes within myself that truly amazed me. The mating bond with Liam had awakened something I never knew existed: confidence rooted not in others, approval, but in the unshakable knowledge that I was valued by someone whose judgment I trusted completely. This morning found me in the garden behind our home, tending to the herbs that had become my specialty. Under Liam's patient guidance, I had discovered that my supposed weakness in traditional pack skills masked a different kind of strength entirely. I possessed an intuitive understanding of healing magic that rivaled the most experienced pack healers, along with an empathic ability that allowed me to sense the deeper needs of those around me. "The delegation from the Northern Territories has arrived," Liam announced, emerging from the cottage with the easy grace that never failed to make my heart flutter. "They're specifically requesting to meet with you about the border dispute that's been brewing for months." Me. 6 months ago, no one would have sought my opinion on anything more significant than which herbs to use for seasoning soup. Now, pack leaders from across the region regularly requested my mediation in conflicts that had resisted resolution for years. "What's your assessment of the situation?" I asked, wiping soil from my hands as I prepared to receive our guests. The question itself demonstrated how much our relationship had evolved. Liam never made decisions that affected both our packs without consulting me first, treating my insights as equal to his own experience and political knowledge. "The Northern and Eastern Territories have legitimate grievances on both sides," he replied thoughtfully, "but they're too proud to admit fault and too stubborn to compromise without external guidance. They need someone who can see past the surface arguments to the real issues underneath. Someone like me." "You mean," I said with a smile that reflected confidence I was still learning to embrace. "Someone exactly like you," he confirmed, pulling me into his arms for a kiss that still made my knees weak despite 6 months of marriage. "The woman everyone called Unworthy has become the most sought-after mediator in the supernatural world. I find that incredibly satisfying. As we prepared to meet with the delegation, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment. The transformation hadn't been easy or immediate. Those first weeks after our mating had been filled with challenges from wolves, who couldn't accept that the pack failure had somehow earned the respect of one of their most powerful leaders. Elena, in particular, had struggled with my elevation. Her perfect wedding had been overshadowed by my unexpected claiming, and she had spent months attempting to undermine my position through subtle sabotage and not-so-subtle criticism. But even she had eventually been forced to acknowledge that my unconventional abilities produced results that traditional approaches couldn't match. The delegation that arrived consisted of Alpha Prime Marcus Northwind and Alpha Diana Easthaven, two leaders whose mutual hatred had threatened to destabilize the entire region. They brought with them advisors and guards, whose hostile postures suggested this mediation session would be more battle than negotiation. Alpha Prime Northwind, Alpha Easthaven, I greeted them formally, using the diplomatic protocols that Liam had taught me. Welcome to our home. I understand you have territorial disputes that require resolution. With respect, Mrs. Stormclaw, Alpha Prime Northwind said stiffly, we were expecting to meet with your mate. This matter requires someone with actual authority and experience in leadership. The casual dismissal would have devastated me 6 months ago, but now it simply reminded me of how far I had come. With equal respect, Alpha Prime, I am the mediator you requested specifically by name. Your message stated that traditional diplomatic channels had failed and you needed someone with a different perspective. We need someone who understands power. Alpha Diana interjected with barely concealed hostility. Someone who has actually led wolves in battle, made life and death decisions, proven their worth through strength rather than whatever this is. Liam stepped forward with the protective instincts that always flared when someone insulted me, but I placed a gentle hand on his arm. This was my challenge to face, my opportunity to prove that the qualities they dismissed as weakness were actually my greatest strengths. Please, sit, I said calmly, gesturing toward the comfortable chairs we had arranged in our main room. Let's discuss what's really driving this conflict. For the next hour, I listened as both leaders recited grievances that stretched back decades. Territorial boundaries, resource rights, historical slights, and personal vendettas had created a tangled web of hostility that seemed impossible to unravel. But beneath their angry words, I sensed something else entirely. You're both afraid, I said quietly when they had finished their recitations. The accusation sent shockwaves through both delegations, advisors muttering protests, while the alphas themselves bristled with offended pride. Afraid, Alpha Prime Northwind snarled. I fear nothing. Certainly not some upstart territory leader who thinks she can. You're afraid that your pack is too small to survive independently, I continued gently. So you're trying to claim territory that would provide the resources and security you need. And you're afraid that admitting weakness will invite challenges. From your own pack members, Alpha Prime's face went pale as my words hit their mark with devastating accuracy. Turned to Alpha Diana, and you're afraid that allowing any territorial concessions will make you look weak to the neighboring packs who have been waiting for an excuse to move against your borders. You're fighting not because you want this land, but because you think yielding any ground will encourage others to take more. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the wind rustling through the trees outside our cottage. Both leaders stared at me with expressions of shock and something that might have been recognition. How did you? Alpha Diana began, then stopped herself. Because I've spent my entire life being afraid, I replied honestly. Afraid of not being strong enough, smart enough, worthy enough? I understand how fear can drive us to make choices that hurt ourselves and others. I stood and moved to the window that overlooked the garden, where I had discovered my true calling. But I've also learned that the things we fear most about ourselves are often the very qualities that make us uniquely valuable. Alpha Prime, your concern for your pack's welfare isn't weakness. It's the mark of a leader who truly cares about his people. Alpha Diana, your determination to protect your territory shows strength of purpose that commands respect. What are you proposing? Alpha Prime asked quietly. A merger, I said simply. Combine your territories into a single, stronger region with dual leadership. Share resources and defensive responsibilities while maintaining your individual pack identities. Create something new that serves both your peoples better than either territory could manage alone. The suggestion was so radical, so outside traditional pack thinking, that both leaders sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Joint leadership has never been attempted, Alpha Diana protested. The logistics alone would be nightmarish. The logistics would be challenging, I corrected gently, but not impossible. And the benefits would far outweigh the difficulties. Your combined territory would be large enough to deter aggression from neighbors, wealthy enough to provide prosperity for all residents, and strong enough to negotiate from a position of strength rather than fear. What followed was 3 hours of detailed discussion about boundaries, resource allocation, leadership structures, and the countless practical concerns that such a merger would entail. But gradually, as I helped them work through each problem, both leaders began to see the vision I was painting. By sunset, we had the framework for an agreement that would create the largest and most prosperous territory in the region, while solving the underlying fears that had driven them to conflict. This is remarkable, Alpha Prime admitted as we finalized the details. I came here expecting another failed negotiation, but you've shown us possibilities we never considered. You've given us hope, Alpha Diana added with genuine gratitude. For the first time in years, I can see a future for my pack that doesn't involve constant warfare and struggle. As the delegations prepared to leave, both leaders offered formal apologies for their initial dismissiveness. We misjudged you badly, Alpha Prime said with obvious embarrassment. Your reputation for wisdom and insight is clearly well-deserved. The supernatural world is fortunate to have leaders like you and Beta Liam, Alpha Diana agreed. You've shown us that strength comes in many forms, and perhaps the most powerful form is the ability to see solutions where others see only problems. After our guests departed, Liam and I sat together on our porch, watching the stars emerge in the clear night sky. His arm around my shoulders felt like the most natural thing in the world, a comfort I had never thought I would experience. Do you ever regret it? I asked quietly. Choosing me over all the other options available to you? Liam's laugh was warm and genuine. Every day, he said, and my heart clenched until he continued. I regret that it took me so long to work up the courage to approach you. I regret all the time we lost, because I was worried about what others would think. I regret that you had to endure years of cruelty before finding someone who recognized your worth. He turned to face me, his gray eyes serious and full of love that still took my breath away. But I have never for even a moment regretted claiming you as my mate. You've made me a better leader, a better man, and a better wolf. The woman everyone called Unworthy has proven to be the most worthy partner I could have imagined. 6 months ago, I had been the failed sister, the unwanted daughter, the pack member everyone tolerated but no one valued. Tonight, I was the Luna who had prevented a war through wisdom rather than warfare, the healer who mended hearts as well as bodies, the mediator whose unconventional perspective solved problems that had resisted traditional solutions, the blood moon wedding that had seemed like the end of my hopes had actually been the beginning of everything I was meant to become. And the Victor who had claimed me when everyone else called me unworthy had given me the greatest gift possible. The knowledge that true worth comes not from others, recognition, but from the confidence to be exactly who you were meant to be. As we headed inside to prepare for bed, I caught my reflection in the window and smiled at what I saw there. Not the broken, unwanted woman who had stood at the edge of that wedding celebration, but someone who had found her purpose, claimed her power, and discovered that sometimes the greatest strength lies in the courage to be vulnerable enough to let others see your true value. The unwanted sister had become an essential leader, and the woman everyone called Unworthy had proven that worth is determined not by others' limitations, but by your own willingness to embrace the gifts that make you unique. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of transformation and self-discovery. If this story of finding your true worth through love and recognition touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel for more amazing tales that prove our greatest strengths often come disguised as our deepest insecurities. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that being underestimated by the wrong people can lead to being treasured by the right ones. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell to never miss our latest supernatural love stories that celebrate the power of seeing beyond surface judgments to the treasure that lies within.